Welcome back to the Modern Day Way podcast. I'm here with Sam and Ben today, and we are going to be talking about something we teased a little bit last week. There is a new thing that we are very excited to share about how we are viewing our growth and impact potential in St. Louis. We are going to discuss a little bit about a conglomerate that we're looking at to facilitate that impact, but as, if not more importantly, the nonprofit that will be associated with the conglomerate to increase our reach and our impact in St. Louis and the surrounding community.
Yeah, so ultimately when you're starting a business and, you could do it for a variety of different reasons. I mean, the three of us, the thing that we're so heavily, set on is the impact that we can make and the difference that we can make and the value we can bring to the community. We were having a conversation the other night and we all looked at each other and we said, how I would know that I failed is if I looked back at my life, before I died and said, I didn't make any kind of, impact in order to lift up St. Louis in general. And really what we're doing here is trying to create opportunity. And inside of one of our kind of collective companies that we're building at the moment, is a nonprofit, and that nonprofit's going to become Baseline, and so all of our companies come into become, all right, and Baseline is the start, right, and that B right there, because that's the first letter in that word, is going to be the ground for us to make an impact and to provide value to our community and to the amazing citizens that we have here inside of St. Louis City. And so you want to elaborate a little on what Baseline is?
Yeah, so we view Baseline as the foundation because we think the people that we work with are the foundation of what we're able to do, right? If it doesn't matter what your vision is, if you can't execute it, all it does is live on paper. So one of the things we've talked about a lot is we've had kind of the fortunate ability to work with a lot of people who come from various levels of disadvantaged backgrounds. And whether that's in construction or real estate adjacent fields, a consistent conversation we have is people telling us, man, it took me a long time to break into this, or I looked for a job for 6 months and I finally got the opportunity to go somewhere where I could learn and move forward or elevate my potential career path, my potential pay, all of those things, right? And so as we heard those things within our own companies, what we started talking about was, how do we create more opportunity for that? How do we focus on opening some doors, building some staircases, and just creating an opportunity for people to kind of move upward and forward out of the places they're in right now?
And if you really look at it and dig into it about how do you lift up the economic presence of a specific location, you can't ultimately go in and say, I'm going to make an impact by creating, say affordable housing of sorts, because if you create that affordable housing, but the community is just going to kind of deteriorate it the way that it was, already at the beginning, because you haven't actually changed any of the lives inside of that community. You haven't built a ground for them to stand on. And a lot of the time, the ground for them to stand on looks like a job. It looks like an ability to start. And so an ability to start for folks, a lot of the time, just looks like an opportunity that you might have had growing up that they were never given. And so as far as the folks that have been impacted by, just kind of the lay of the land, whatever they saw, as a possibility. And a lot of that comes down to parents, okay? And how your father behaved, whatever, actions that he took in his life, you now think that that's going to be the outcome for your life as well. And so if we focus a lot on the kind of male demographic, kind of between the ages of 25 to 50, and how we can serve them best, a lot of it looks like a job and mental health and being able to really walk with them throughout those steps. And so it's exciting to be able to look at it. It's going to be an adventure, to say the least, and it's going to be something that we are incredibly proud of. And I know that we've already spent, countless hours in time working with very established and really big folks, making a big difference in St. Louis already, and setting that up in a way where the guys are actually able to change the trajectory of their future, change the trajectory of their family. Because once you have stability in a household and your dad has a job and he's taking care of things that, should be taken care of, your kids are gonna look up to you at that and say, okay, well, that's how I'm gonna be.
Sure.
And do you want to get a little into the, actual core components of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, to summarize what you're saying, we're talking about teaching people to fish instead of handing them fish, right? And so you mentioned the age range. You mentioned, men, a lot of times fathers, and how their kids can look up to them. In this particular situation, a large reason that we're focusing on these demographics is because that's very applicable to the businesses that we already have in place, the actions that are already happening on job sites and in the real estate world. We have even talked about how that scales and expands to other demographics or going down in age and things like that, right? But we want to start with who we can impact the most. So to focus on these groups of people that may have a history that they fell into, some kind of, criminal history, or grew up in extreme poverty, or, did not have the same opportunities of those that didn't look like them, or, didn't start out in this country. There's a huge list of people who just don't start out on the same base, right? We were all very fortunate, even though we didn't grow up in silver spoon situations, we didn't start behind first base, right? Mm-hmm. We started kind of at our normal space and having a normal amount of what we call advantage today, right? Mm-hmm. And so understanding that there's people who don't even get to start in the ballpark, that's what we want to do. We want to open the doors to the ballpark. Mm-hmm. And so how we start with that is we look at people who have a desire and have a willingness to step out of the space they're in right now and don't know how or don't have the tools to be able to do that. And we try to set those tools in front of them, coach them to use the tools, give them opportunities to not fall in bad habits with workout regimens, with therapy, with other people who can be mentors who are gone through that process already. And we allow those people, or we encourage those people to come in and grow and expand their background so that they can take that next step and not just change their lives, but everybody down the line from them.
Right. So to get a little more practical with the kind of the vision here, we do development projects, we do rehabs, mm-hmm. and that creates economic opportunity, right? Because there's labor that needs to be done. There are jobs that need to be filled. Mm-hmm. Kind of the way that things historically have worked is, you sub it out to a general laborer or a contractor who then brings in guys to work on it. And so our vision then is, well, we've got these development projects going on. We've got these rehabs going on. Why don't we use the economic opportunity that those create to then create a jobs program? And that's really what Baseline is. It's a jobs program where we're bringing in people that are eager for work, they need work, and they're ready and willing to learn.
Yep.
And we're hiring them through the nonprofit, and then we're employing them through the projects that we have going on, through the renovations, through the development projects, to give them that stability, that job, that baseline, and then the trickle-down effect, that not even trickle-down effect, right? But the multiplier effect that has is stability, employment, opportunity, and the way that impacts the community is, really unfathomable. The multiplier effect there just is huge.
Mm-hmm. That is.
It's huge. It really is. And it's not, we've already been doing this. Okay. I mean, when I met Rich, he had a construction company already in place. I think 80% of those folks that were working for that construction company were already from a background that a lot of them, they couldn't get a job. They couldn't get employed in a construction position. And I mean, they had applied for countless jobs and been put down because of whatever kind of history they might be following up. And it's worked for years at this point. Mm-hmm. And so keeping that system going, but then ultimately growing it in a scale where there's really dialed in systems and structures behind what it looks like to break out of that program. And then whatever it looks like for that individual's future going forward, it could be that they go and they start their own business. They go and they, get another job for the union, whatever it might be, right? But ultimately, we want to create an ability for opportunity and a baseline, a ground for them to stand on that's going to allow them to excel in life.
So baseline being the nonprofit. There's a lot of nonprofits out there that have generally similar goals, right? There's other places that try to provide education, job opportunity, some even in the real estate and housing sectors. And one of the things that we feel is a little bit different than some of those out there that are currently operating is we come from a business background in this particular industry. Mm-hmm. And our first discussion around this was not necessarily, okay, how do we start a nonprofit? What donors do we get? Our first discussion was, how do we treat a nonprofit more like a business so that it generates revenue? And instead of that revenue going back to board members or going back to investors, that just furthers the impact or the resources that we can provide to these people, right? So instead of starting with, okay, we're going to try to help a lot of people and we're going to ask people for money to be able to do that, we started with, how do we provide a service that creates value so that we can expand our impact? Mm-hmm. And we've gotten some really good responses from some nonprofit entities, some nonprofit experts in the St. Louis area, some very large entities, as you mentioned, one of the largest in St. Louis. And we at first got some very confused looks when they said, how are you going to try to run a nonprofit like a traditional business? And then they looked at us again and they said, I think this is actually maybe a great way to do this.
Right.
So we've spent you've mentioned it. We've spent countless hours trying to dial this in and figure out how this works appropriately. It doesn't mean we will never have grants. It doesn't mean we will never have donors and gifts. I think that's part of improving the reach. But starting with, to use the double name, starting with a baseline of having an operable company so that it can give back more and more consistently. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very different approach.
And it really does allow us to give back in a way that's going to organically change the trajectory, not just of St. Louis City, but of each individual's life that we're able to impact. And it goes beyond just a job. It goes into mental health in a very healthy way.
Yeah.
And what that looks like is not, cheap, overwhelmed counselors working with people. It's actually the top of the line, the best you're going to get working with guys and helping them get them to their baseline. And then, we incorporate a fitness level to this as well, because, fitness and mental health actually really do go hand in hand. If I didn't get my morning workout in, you guys wouldn't want to be sitting here with me right now. Yeah. And so it plays into all of the core components that we utilize personally on a day-to-day basis to make sure that we're operating at a high level, and what we encourage other people to do so as well. And because of our ability to pick up housing in the way that we do, we're incorporating a housing aspect to this as well. And so you're going to get, housing, therapy, fitness, and then a job incorporated into all of the systems that are tied to this. And ultimately it takes somebody who's motivated and ready to change their life. And if they're not motivated and ready to change their life, then they don't belong in the program.
Yep.
I think a lot of people use that term give back. And I think that's something that's become really consistent in society. And as I sit here and I think about the way we talk about this stuff, the way we talk about what we've had the ability to do, the opportunity to do, I think we're really changing that thought process, that approach, and that perception, as we're creating more of a pass through than giving back, right? We're creating a way for the opportunity that's come to us that we've been, very blessed to receive, and actually handing that, just letting that flow through to others who should have that same opportunity. We didn't come in and conquer the world so we can turn around and hand it back to somebody. We came in and we were very lucky to have some of the opportunities we got. And we're just trying to open some doors so that those opportunities can flow to other people.
Absolutely. I mean, we're blessed, inside of our businesses, and the clients that work with us, we're blessed to be able to work with them. And the differences and the impact that we're able to make is really just an opportunity for us. And so creating opportunity that we have for folks that might not have had it.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. I mean, I would say that's, probably one of the most exciting things that I'm able to work on. And I'm incredibly blessed to be able to work on a ton of different stuff at the moment.
Yeah.
And so baseline. Now we've got a whole lot of other companies that we've already had going for years, ultimately. And so that's where Become comes into play.
So Become is the name of the business, and the vision here is that it's a conglomerate of different companies that mutually exist for the benefit of the rehabilitation, reconstruction, and renovation of properties in St. Louis, and all through the lens of the opportunity that can be created through those projects.
Yeah.
And that opportunity is how we tie in baseline, which is opportunities for job programs, mental health, stability in housing, really all fueled by those construction projects that we'll have going on through Become.
Yeah. And so ultimately, we're super excited, and we're super excited for you guys to watch this vision and mission that we have unfold. And so we appreciate you guys tuning in, and ultimately we will see you guys next week, but it's just going to keep getting better. So don't forget to tune in next week.